You see someone receive difficult news, yet their face remains perfectly still. They nod slowly, process the information, and continue their day as if nothing happened. We often call this strength or professionalism when we see it in others. We admire their ability to stay grounded while everyone else is spiraling. Eventually, you might notice this same stillness inside yourself during a crisis. You feel a strange, hollow calm where you expected to find a sharp pain. This is not a lack of feeling, but a highly efficient psychological shield. It is the quiet art of emotional detachment, functioning exactly as intended. We often think of emotional detachment as a coldness or a lack of empathy. We imagine a person who simply does not care about others. In reality, detachment is a sophisticated survival strategy designed to protect the core. It is the mind's way of managing an overwhelming internal environment. Most people first notice this pattern in someone close to them. They see a partner who shuts down during a heavy or important argument. The partner, in trying to be cruel or dismissive toward your feelings, they are retreating into a bunker because the emotional cost of staying is too high. This behavior is rooted in a fundamental human need for safety. When the world feels too loud, the mind simply turns down the volume. Evolutionarily, being too emotional in a moment of danger was a liability. A hunter who panicked at the sight of a predator did not survive. Modern life has replaced the predator with social pressure and constant digital noise. Our brains have adapted by learning how to disconnect on command. We frame this as being low maintenance or having a thick skin. We treat it as a personality trait rather than a defensive mechanism. By reframing detachment as an adaptation, we see it is not a flaw. It is a tool used to navigate a world that demands constant presence. When you stop feeling, you stop being vulnerable to the unexpected shifts of life. You become a stable observer rather than a reactive participant in chaos. This creates a sense of control that is deeply addictive to the mind. You believe you are winning because you are no longer being hurt. However, this control comes at the price of genuine connection with reality. You are safe, but you are also increasingly isolated within your own fortress. The mind views this isolation as a fair trade for total emotional security. It would rather feel nothing than risk feeling something it cannot handle. This is where the pattern becomes difficult to ignore in our daily lives. We begin to value the absence of pain over the presence of joy. Consider the friend who never complains and never seems to need anything. We rely on them because they are predictable and always seem fine. We rarely ask what happened to the parts of them that aren't fine. We accept the mask because it makes our own lives much easier. This acceptance reinforces the behavior, telling the individual that detachment is their value. They learn that being fine is the only way to be loved. It is a psychological trap that rewards you for disappearing behind a wall. The more you detach, the more the world praises your steady composure. You are not becoming stronger, you are simply becoming less available to yourself. The internal world is being sacrificed to maintain the external image. This is the hidden cost of survival in a high-pressure social environment. We trade our depth for the ability to keep moving without any friction. What looks like peace is often just a very quiet form of surrender. We have surrendered the right to be affected by the world around us. This is the first layer of understanding why we choose to stay numb. It feels like a choice, but it is actually an involuntary biological response. Your nervous system has decided that feeling is no longer a safe option. It has initiated a shutdown sequence to preserve your basic functional ability. Most people stay at this level, believing they have mastered their own emotions. They don't realize the shield has started to fuse with their skin. Awareness begins when we stop seeing the shield as a source of pride. We must look at why the shield was built in the first place. The mind does not build walls in a vacuum of safety and peace. It builds them in response to a perceived threat that never truly left. Staying with this uncomfortable truth is the only way to see clearly. It is the first step in examining the unspoken patterns of the self. Choosing awareness over avoidance requires us to look at the foundations of the wall. We must ask what the mind is so afraid of feeling. The origins of emotional detachment are rarely found in a single, dramatic event. They are woven into the quiet, repetitive moments of an ordinary childhood. A child learns very early which parts of themselves are acceptable to others. They observe the reactions of parents and caregivers during times of distress. If a child's intense grief is met with frustration, they learn a lesson. They realize that showing vulnerability creates a threat to their primary connection. To maintain the bond with the caregiver, the child must hide the pain. They begin to suppress the emotional response before it even reaches the surface. This is what psychologists call an avoidant attachment style forming in real time. It is a brilliant, necessary adaptation for a child seeking social safety. By dampening their own needs, the child ensures they are not a burden. They become the easy child who never makes trouble or demands attention. Most people first notice this pattern in someone close to them. They see a friend who cannot ask for help, even when drowning. This friend learned long ago that help comes with a heavy emotional price. They believe that self-reliance is the only true way to remain secure. This early conditioning creates a blueprint for how the brain handles all stress. The mind identifies high-stakes emotions as signals of impending social rejection or failure. Evolutionary psychology suggests that being cast out of the group meant certain death. Therefore, the brain treats social disapproval as a literal life-threatening emergency. To prevent this death, the mind creates a psychic distance from the self. It steps back from the raw experience to avoid being overwhelmed by fear. This is not a conscious decision made by a rational, thinking adult mind. It is a primal reflex triggered by the oldest parts of our biology. Consider a young student who is bullied or shamed in a public classroom. If they cry, the shame intensifies and the social damage becomes much worse. If they can remain stone-faced, they deny their attackers the satisfaction of impact. The detachment becomes a weapon used to survive a hostile social environment. The brain records this success and files it away as a winning strategy. It learns that not feeling is the most effective way to stay powerful. Over time, this reflex becomes so fast that it happens almost instantly. The person doesn't even know they are upset until much later. If ever, they have automated the process of emotional erasure to save precious mental energy. The energy saved is then redirected toward functional tasks and basic survival. As we move into adulthood, these childhood scripts continue to run the show. We enter relationships expecting that our vulnerability will eventually be used against us. We preemptively detach to ensure that no one can ever truly surprise us. If we are already distant, a partner's departure cannot cause a total collapse. This is where the pattern becomes difficult to ignore in our long-term commitments. We realize we are standing next to someone, but we are not there. We have mastered the art of being present physically while remaining absent psychologically. We provide the expected answers without feeling the weight of the words. The mind justifies this as being rational or logical during a difficult time. We tell ourselves that we are just more mature than those who react. This narrative hides the fact that we are actually terrified of our depth. We are afraid that if we start feeling, the flood will never end. So, we keep the gates locked and the water levels low and manageable. We prefer the drought of detachment to the possibility of a psychological flood. The origin of this behavior has a profound, forgotten need for total protection. We are protecting a child who was once told their feelings were too much. Now, as adults, we tell ourselves the same lie to keep moving forward. We believe the lie because it allows us to function in the world. Staying with this uncomfortable truth reveals the structural integrity of our internal walls. We see that the wall was built to save our lives. Choosing awareness over avoidance means recognizing the architect of that original wall. It means seeing the survival instinct for what it truly is today. What looks like a personality is often just a very old defense system. It is a system that was designed for a world we no longer inhabit. In our social circles, emotional detachment often disguises itself as a desirable form of competence. We gravitate toward people who appear unshakable in the face of interpersonal drama. Most people first notice this pattern in someone close to them. They see a colleague who handles a high-stakes meeting with an almost robotic level of calm, while others are sweating or showing frustration. This individual remains perfectly composed and distant. We interpret this as professional mastery rather than a psychological retreat from the room. In the workplace, the person who does not get emotional is usually the one promoted. They are viewed as more reliable because they do not let human messy feelings interfere. This creates a social hierarchy where the most detached person holds the most power. Those who feel deeply are viewed as volatile or difficult to manage by others. The detached individual learns to navigate this by providing only the necessary social signals. They mirror the emotions of others without actually experiencing the internal weight of them. In a friendship, this might look like the person who is always the listener. They are happy to hear your problems because it keeps the focus off themselves. By focusing on your chaos, they avoid the vulnerability of sharing their own internal state. It is a subtle power dynamic that keeps them safely out of reach. You feel supported, but you realize you know nothing about their actual inner life. They have become a mirror for you while remaining a mystery to themselves. This behavior is particularly visible in modern romantic dynamics where playing it cool is rewarded. The person who cares the less is the one who controls the relationship. We have turned emotional unavailability into a social game with winners and losers. We reward the person who can walk away without looking back at the damage. This is where the pattern becomes difficult to ignore in our most intimate moments. You are lying next to someone who feels like 1,000 miles away. They are kind, they are polite, and they follow all the social protocols of love. Yet, there is a glass wall between your experience and their true internal self. When you try to bridge that gap, they might respond with logic or mild confusion. They use intellectualization to distance themselves from the heat of a shared emotional moment. They might say they are just not a dramatic person to justify their lack of response. This phrase is a shield used to invalidate the emotional needs of the other. It reframes the partner's desire for connection as an unreasonable demand for high-intensity drama. The detached person remains the sane one while the partner becomes too much. This social expression of detachment allows a person to move through life without friction. They avoid the messy, loud, and unpredictable nature of genuine human intimacy and conflict. It is a survival strategy that works exceptionally well in a surface-level social environment. You can have many acquaintances, but very few people who actually know you. The mind views this as a success because it minimizes the risk of social injury. If no one gets close, no one can see the parts that are broken. We see this in families where certain topics are simply never discussed or acknowledged. Everyone agrees to the silent contract of keeping things light and strictly functional. The strong family member is the one who coordinates the funeral without shedding a single tear. We praise their strength while ignoring the fact that they have simply checked out. This social reward system reinforces the idea that feeling is a form of weakness. We learn that to be respected, we must be as immovable as a stone. We treat our social interactions as transactions where the goal is to remain as net neutral as possible. We don't want to owe anyone an emotional explanation for our existence. This creates a world of polite strangers who are all performing a version of themselves. We are all participating in a collective agreement to stay on the safe surface. What looks like a harmonious social group is often just a collection of guarded individuals. We have traded the warmth of true belonging for the safety of being ignored. Staying with this uncomfortable truth reveals how we use others to validate our own walls. We surround ourselves with people who won't ask us to feel anything real. Choosing awareness over avoidance means looking at the people you have chosen to keep close. It means asking if you love them or if you just love the distance. What looks like a healthy boundary is often just a very effective way to stay lonely. We are protecting ourselves from the very thing that makes life worth living. Modern culture has perfected the art of rewarding emotional detachment through the architecture of our daily lives. We live in an era that prizes efficiency and constant, rapid-fire digital communication. The speed of the internet requires us to process 1,000 tragedies before we finish breakfast. If we felt the full weight of every headline, we would never leave our beds. To survive this deluge of information, the mind develops a protective layer of permanent cynicism. We scroll past suffering with a flick of a thumb, training our brains to ignore impact. Most people first notice this pattern in someone close to them. They see a friend who responds to a personal crisis with a simple, detached text emoji. The digital interface provides a convenient buffer that prevents the raw energy of human emotion from reaching us. We can curate our responses and edit our faces before anyone sees them. This creates a cultural environment where being bothered is seen as a sign of digital or social illiteracy. We are expected to stay updated, stay connected, and yet stay completely unbothered. Social media rewards the person who can project a perfectly curated, high-gloss life without any visible cracks. We like and share the image of stability, not the reality of the struggle. The main character energy we see online is almost always a performance of total emotional independence. It suggests that needing others is a secondary, less desirable state of human being. This is where the pattern becomes difficult to ignore in our quietest moments of isolation. We have thousands of connections, but not a single person we can call in the night. We have built a world that is optimized for everything except the slow, messy process of feeling. Our workplaces demand that we leave our personal lives at the front door every morning. Technology allows us to outsource our emotional labor to apps, algorithms, and automated customer service responses. We are losing the habit of navigating the friction of another human being's presence. Society quietly rewards this detachment by labeling it as being resilient or highly adaptable to change. We are told that the future belongs to those who can pivot without being slowed by sentiment. The psychological cost of this adaptation is a thinning of the internal self until it is transparent. We are becoming highly efficient processors of data who have forgotten how to be truly affected. Consider the modern dating landscape, where ghosting has become a standard method of ending a human connection. It is the ultimate expression of detachment, treating a person as a disposable notification. By removing the need for a face-to-face conversation, we remove the discomfort of seeing another person's pain. We choose the easy silence over the difficult reality of a shared human moment. The culture tells us that our time is too valuable to spend on the drama of others. We are encouraged to protect our peace by cutting off anyone who requires emotional effort. This language of self-care is often used as a sophisticated mask for a simple fear of intimacy. We frame our avoidance a healthy boundary to avoid looking at our own coldness. The mind loves these cultural labels because they provide a moral high ground for our survival instincts. We feel virtuous for being detached, believing we are simply more evolved than the rest. We are living in an experiment of collective dissociation, fueled by high-speed data and social performance. We are learning how to be together while staying completely and safely alone. This is the hidden cost of a society that values the user experience over the human experience. We want the benefits of community without the vulnerability required to actually build a community. The modern world does not want your depth, it wants your attention and your functional output. It rewards the parts of you that are machine-like and ignores the parts that are alive. Staying with this uncomfortable truth means recognizing how much of your personality is actually just cultural conditioning. You have been trained to be distant because it makes you easier to manage. Choosing awareness over avoidance means seeing the digital tools in your hand as extensions of your shield. It means asking what you are trying to hide from by staying constantly busy. What looks like a modern lifestyle is often just a very crowded form of psychological hiding. We are hiding in plain sight, hoping no one notices that we have stopped feeling. The world continues to move faster, and our walls continue to grow thicker and more transparent. We are becoming masters of a reality that we no longer feel a part of. The realization does not come with a sense of relief or a sudden burst of warmth. It arrives as a cold, sharp clarity about the state of your own internal landscape. You begin to see that your composure was never a sign of healing or ultimate mental strength. It was a successful retreat from a world that felt far too dangerous to inhabit. Most people first notice this pattern in someone close to them before they see the void within. They realize they have been holding their breath for years, waiting for a safe moment. That safe moment never arrives because the shield itself has become the environment you live in every day. You have become a tenant in a house built entirely of your own defenses. The more you understand the mechanism of your detachment, the more you see its absolute, terrifying perfection. It has done exactly what you asked it to do when you were small. It has kept you away from the sharp edges of rejection, the heat of shame, and the weight of loss. It has kept you safe, but it has also kept you from being real. You are a functional, capable adult who can navigate the most complex social and professional systems with ease. Yet, you feel like a ghost haunting the corridors of your own life story. The tragedy of the survival instinct is that it does not know when the war is over. It continues to guard the gates long after the enemy has retreated into the past. You find yourself looking at the people you supposedly love and wondering where the connection actually lives. You see the mechanics of the relationship, but you cannot feel the underlying pulse of it. This is the point where the mind tries to find a quick exit or a simple solution. It wants to know how to fix the distance and how to become whole again. But awareness offers no such comfort, because the wall is not something you can simply tear down. The wall is what has been holding you together while you were breaking apart. To remove the detachment is to invite the very flood you spent a lifetime trying to prevent. It is to face the accumulated silence of every moment you chose not to feel. Most people prefer to turn back at this stage and return to the safety of their numbness. They decide that the cost of being awake is far higher than they are willing to pay. They accept the hollow calm as their permanent reality, content to watch their lives from a safe distance. They become experts at the theory of feeling without ever experiencing the practice of it. You are left with the knowledge that your thick skin is actually a form of psychological scar tissue. It is tough and durable, but it has no nerve endings and no sensitivity. You can move through the world without pain, but you also move through it without any true impact. You are a stone at the bottom of a river, unchanged by the current. This realization creates a persistent, quiet tension that sits in the back of the mind during every interaction. You know you are performing, and you know that everyone else is likely performing too. The modern world will continue to reward you for this performance every single day of your life. It will call you stable, it will call you reliable, and it will call you strong. Only you will know the weight of the emptiness that sits behind that mask of total competence. Only you will know how much of yourself you have traded for the sake of survival. There is no simple path back to the self once the self has been so thoroughly hidden. The mind has forgotten the way home, and the map was burned a long time ago. Choosing awareness over avoidance is not a cure. It is merely an honest assessment of the damage. It is a space where unspoken patterns are examined without the promise of a happy ending. As you look at the people around you, you see the same silent architecture in every face you meet. We are a collection of islands, connected only by the water that keeps us apart. The mechanism that saved you has also become the thing that prevents you from ever being found. You are safe, you are secure, and you are utterly, profoundly alone in your stillness. The question of who lives behind the wall remains unanswered, as the wall is all that is left. We have optimized our lives for survival, only to realize we have survived our own capacity to live. The survival instinct is a loop that never ends, and the mind is a master of keeping the cycle. Perhaps the most uncomfortable truth is that we have become the very thing we were once afraid of. This detachment in the face of modern life is not an isolated phenomenon or a personal failure. It is a single thread in a much larger tapestry of how we manage the burden of consciousness. When we stop feeling the world, we also stop being able to truly perceive the people who inhabit it with us. This silence between us is the foundation of many other patterns we have yet to name. Have you ever noticed how your need for control intensifies the moment you feel someone else is starting to truly see you. Joining a space where these unspoken patterns are examined honestly is a choice to stay with the truth. Choosing awareness over avoidance is the only way to see the structure of the hidden self.